So we're going to get started, and just want to thank you all for coming out today. It's a little rainy and a little cold, but I'm glad that you made it here. I'm State Senator Julie Kushner, and it's great to be back together. So I just, we call this town hall as an opportunity to check in with each other, hear a little bit about what's going on in the session, and then, take questions from the crowd. So that's the goal here today. A lot of people I know are having fun chatting with each other, so we're not going to keep you real long, so you'll have the chance to chat again. So I think most of you know that this is my third, I guess it's my fourth session in the legislature. And what I found is over the years, you really get a sense of how we develop policy and how we develop laws that really make a difference in the state. And so what I want to talk about tonight is about the laws that we're working on right now. So they're in progress and they haven't actually passed yet. But some of the things that we're most concerned about is looking at our budget. We passed a really good budget last year that had a lot of very important legislation in it that really helped working families. But this year we do what's called an adjustment, and we look at what money there is to maybe expand on things. And so I brought a list with me because we're working on so many things. And a lot of it is related to COVID. If you remember last year, we did some COVID bills. The one that I worked on the most was the Essential Workers COVID Relief Fund. And that was a fund of $34 million for the essential workers, the frontline workers who got COVID at the beginning of, from any time from March 2020 to July 2021. And that was a bill that was set up to reimburse people if they lost money out of their pocket from unpaid wages, or if they had health expenses that were not covered by their insurance. And so that's something that just got off the ground in terms of paying out benefits. It went into effect, the benefits started getting paid out in January of this year. So if you know people who did get COVID who were essential workers, they should apply for that. I will say that there was a thing we have to fix in that bill because we thought we were good in covering people who were classified by the CDC as either in Group 1 or Group A for their vaccinations. And we found out that we were leaving out folks who were in Group 1C. For instance, people who worked in a homeless shelter were not included, and it wasn't intentional on anybody's part. So that's a good example of what we'll do this year. We'll come in and we'll make that fix, and we'll pass legislation to fix that in the bill. Last year, we passed a school construction bill and in that was funding for the Career Academy here in Danbury. We're going to need to go in there again and fix that this year because of the change in the venue, the change in the location, and the change in the whole deal. But I'm confident that will get done. The same thing happened in New Fairfield. We had to make some changes in their school construction bill. We're working on that, and I'm confident that will get done as well. So this year, what we're really trying to focus on is things that oh, Bob, you should come up here. There's some seats here. I see Bob Godfrey, our state representative. There's a seat right here. I'm directing traffic. And Bob, feel free to jump in. Anytime you want.
He's shy. I'm not used to speaking in public.
So this year, what we are looking at is addressing some of the issues that we found as a result of COVID, particularly focusing on mental health issues. In public health, there's a big omnibus bill that's going to cover all kinds of mental health issues. In the Education Committee, there's an omnibus bill also to really look at how do we strengthen our schools and provide more mental health services, behavioral health services in the schools as well. Those bills are still being worked on, but what's interesting about when we have these very important bills in the Senate, we label them Senate Bill 1, Senate Bill 2, Senate Bill 3. Same thing happens in the House. A little bit, 5001. They start in the 5000s though. But in the Senate, we have Senate Bill 1 through 5, and those bills indicate that we're really elevating them to, recognize that this is of great importance to us. We did, a few years ago, you might remember, in 2019, Senate Bill 1 was a bill I got to champion, which was the Paid Family and Medical Leave Act. And so that's what I'm talking about. We really need to make sure that we get, effective legislation through, and that's part of how we do that is labeling them. But I'm not going to go through all the bills, but I will tell you that there has been a focus in education on, as I said, providing resources in our schools. That means making sure we have enough counselors, making sure we have enough services, and a big focus on that. There's a Senate bill in the Public Health Committee and in the Children's Committee. These are bills that deal with children's mental health that we're going to be focusing on. We've got a bill in transportation that's a really important omnibus bill that deals with climate change and addresses issues of how do we bring down emission standards. And an example of something in that bill is that we are going to incentivize companies to buy electric vehicles, not just for their fleets, for businesses to have an incentive to use more electric vehicles. So those are the kinds of big bills that we're working on. I've been talking a lot about unemployment overpayments, which is a really serious problem in the state. We're going to have a little trouble getting that through. I'm going to be upfront about it. But I'm hopeful still that we're going to be able to get some reimbursement for folks who got, through no fault of their own, hit with these overpayments of unemployment. So those are some of the major bills. I'm just going to use my cheat sheet here. A huge thing, childcare. So we're right on the verge, and I see Marie back there, she knows about this. We're right on the verge of a real crisis in childcare services. We are having a hard time finding childcare workers. The stress that was put on these workers during COVID was incredible. And so one of the things we're trying to do is to put more money into salaries for childcare workers. And that's something that's incredibly important. We had a rally down here a few weeks ago, and a lot of you may have attended that, to really draw attention to how important childcare is in our schools, in our society. Without childcare, that's how kids get their best start. So we want to make sure we fund that as well. We're increasing Care for Kids. Our proposal is to increase it by $10 million. So there's more funding for also for parents to send their kids through these programs. We put in $23 million in the budget. Just today we approved that in appropriations to help raise the salaries of personal care attendants, the people who take care of folks in their homes when they are disabled or when they are just old age. And so that's really important. Because those workers don't make enough money for the work they do. They actually deserve a lot more than we've ever paid them. So I'm really happy about that as well. We're looking to provide better health care for undocumented children. We know kids that have come here, they're not yet citizens, they're undocumented. We need to protect those kids. We need to take care of those kids. And so I know there's a couple folks here who've really advocated for that. Carolina and Camilla are the biggest. You guys worked so hard at that. And today in appropriations, we passed funding to provide insurance for kids up to age 12. And once they're in the program, they continue until they're 18. And so that's, we're really going to work hard to make sure that gets into the final budget. They set up this is something for all of you who live near the lake, or particularly in New Fairfield. This has been a huge issue, and Sherman. I do represent Sherman, New Fairfield, Danbury, part of Bethel, but with the redistricting, if I'm reelected, I won't any longer have Sherman and New Fairfield, but I've said, and Bethel as well. I will gain folks from Ridgefield. I know I saw a Ridgefield friend here tonight, so, but I do know that the lake is a really big economic driver for our communities, not just the lake communities, but also for Danbury. And so we really need to pay attention that we're taking care of the lake. And I'm really pleased that we're funding an extra $300,000 to create positions in an Office of Aquatic Invasive Species. And that's something that is really important for all of us. health services, we put in $7 million to provide mental health services at 36 school-based health centers. We're also working on a lot of the opioid issues. So we'll talk about that a little more, but right now we have put in funding to provide to enhance and expand Medicaid members with opioid use disorder can receive medically necessary treatment now. We put aside nearly $30 million for that. There's some, get to the last page. You know, I hope you didn't expect me to memorize all this. We have had a problem that we're not too proud of in this state, where we actually have not made good use of our tobacco settlement dollars. And in the past, they have not gone to the original purpose, which was to fund programs that assist in smoking cessation. So this year, we've been very adamant that we're going to put that money in, and we're setting aside $12 million to advance those programs, and they're being set up in a way that they can't take that money and use it for something else. There's a really important expansion of the earned income tax credit, and that goes to families that don't make a lot of money, and we're expanding that specifically here in the state. It's going to cost us, well, it's not going to cost us. I'm very pleased about it, so I hate the way I just said it, because it's something we're investing in the families that struggle to get by. Their earned income tax credit will raise their income in their family through a tax credit, and we're going to spend about $42 million on that this year. And I believe I heard that that's going to benefit about 185,000 families here in Connecticut. In addition, we're working on a property tax credit that will really help the middle income families. Right now, the way that credit is set up is you get a $200 credit if you're below a certain income level. And we're setting it up now to go to $300, so an additional $100 for everyone. And so that's a tax credit that will help middle class families who own their homes or their condos. We are doing other things that are really important, like extending the telehealth visits under, in our state, we have never really addressed telehealth. We're kind of behind other states. But as a result of COVID, we found we had to go to telehealth, and now people are understanding that it really benefits a lot of people, because it allows you to have a checkup or a check-in with your doctor and not have to take off, 3 hours from work to do that. And so for a lot of working family, that really makes a huge difference. For people who have a hard time getting, out of their homes, it makes a huge difference to be able to do telehealth, and we're extending that again. We just passed in the Senate, and we'll go to the, I think we passed it in the House too, didn't we, the absentee ballot voting?
Yes.
We did in both chambers, the House and the Senate, to continue the absentee voting, so that we'll be able to continue that practice. And for anybody who looked at the turnout from 2020 when we had absentee ballots, I mean, it was an enormous improvement in terms of the number of people that can vote. And I don't understand people's attachment to the idea that we can only vote on one specific day during specific hours, because it doesn't work for people. Because what happens is, if you work, there are a lot of people who are working 2 or 3 jobs. And there's no recognition of that. Even if those 2 and 3 jobs are in the same city, which they're not often you're driving somewhere to go work your 2nd or 3rd job. But even if they are, it makes it very hard. And what happens to the person who wakes up sick that morning and didn't know they were going to be sick? If you vote early through absentee balloting, then you know your vote got cast and counted, and that's really important. Another area that we've been working on for years is gun violence prevention. And this year there's a bill in public health to actually fund programs that are on the ground working to intervene when there are shootings, for instance, to try and bring down the temperature. People who are trained in this, there are gun violence professionals who know how to do this work, they're trained in it, and they can go into the hospital and calm down the family. And there are a lot of programs like this around Connecticut, but they're not connected. And so the goal of this is to fund those programs with the people that are doing the work now and recognize how important it is to address gun violence in our state. And so it will involve funding, it will also involve advisory council. So those are just a few of the bills. I mean, there are hundreds of bills that we're working on. I know in the Labor Committee I think we had 42 bills that we raised out of our committee, just that one committee, and I think there's 22 committees, 23 committees, something like that. So that just gives you an idea of how much we're working on. It is considered what's called a short session, so it's really short this year. It's started in the beginning of February, and it will end in the beginning of May. And so that's our short session. Then next year it'll be back to the long session where we go from January to June. But it's very intense when it's a short session. And they always say, well, you're not going to get anything done, it's a short session. But then we all end up raising all these bills and working very hard to get as much done as we can. So that's essentially where we're at. I will say that, even though we're only in session for those few months, the work goes on throughout the year. I'm on the Appropriations Committee. We meet frequently throughout the year because we have business we have to take care of in between sessions. There's all kinds of constituent work that we take care of in between sessions. It's very, very important work at making sure we're connecting people with resources. And that's a lot of what we do. And I've had really great staff helping me. A few people are here today. I don't know where some of you might have known Mike Fallon, who was my aide. He's not here because Mike got a really great job with Senator Murphy. And he really, I'm telling you, he didn't want to leave me. He was so happy working with me. I'm just kidding. He was. We had a great friendship. But it was a wonderful opportunity for him, and so I was happy that he was able to do that. But Mike Antonakis is here. I know Mike is filling in, and I know he may be in the back there, but he's here. And also Ryan Hughes. Where are you, Ryan? Ryan has been helping with the policy. Ryan works on 4 different committees, but I'm very fortunate. Mike is back there, and Ryan is here. Ryan has been just a tremendous help in the labor policy position that he holds. And so when we have bills that we're organizing and getting information on, Mike and Ryan are there to help. And then Garnet is here. Garnet McLaughlin is also really important. She's working on our outreach staff. So we have a lot of good people. We have a lot of great people working on the staff. And I think I've named everybody. I see so many friendly faces. I'm like, I want to stop and say hello to everybody. So with that, I think I'll open it up for any questions you might have about particular bills. Go ahead.
You mentioned easier voting as legislation, but is there also an effort to amend the Constitution for that and for abortion? And where does that stand? Is that likely to pass? Or?
So yes, so on amending the Constitution, that's a several-step process. We have to first pass it in the chambers of the legislature, and then it has to go to a ballot vote. We have to pass it twice, right, Bob? And then it has to go to a referendum vote. So that will be on the ballot. And it's really important people understand when you read that ballot, it's basically a change in the Constitution to have early voting so that people can vote by absentee ballot in advance of the election. And it's really important that people understand when that referendum comes up, it's important to vote yes on that so that people will have that opportunity. We're one of just a handful of states that does not have early voting. And it's been shown to work in other states. So I'm really glad you raised that because that is something we'll be voting on. And on the question of abortion, we have really strong abortion laws in our state that provide for the opportunity for people to have access to abortion. There is concern because of what's been going on in other states that we may need to address that. I don't know that that's going to happen with a constitutional amendment. There's a lot of discussion, but there are other things that are being done to make sure that we can improve the access. Thank you. Thanks for that question. Hey.
My question is, how hard it was for you guys to work to get the $15 minimum wage? Because I'm as a Latino, most of us, we don't own businesses. Most of us, we're just workers. And I know businesses are well represented, especially big businesses, they are represented well. But the workers, like most of us, we work for somebody. We're not represented. So when you guys passed the $15 minimum wage, it was a tremendous success for us because we never had it. We had a Republican, well, many years ago, and he never wanted to support the minimum wage raise. And I think that was a great thing. Could you tell us about how hard it was?
That was pretty intense. And so back in 2011, we had passed an increase in the minimum wage to $10.10 an hour, which is, and it stayed there. And I know Bob can tell you there were many efforts to raise the minimum wage over the years, but it was very difficult. Can I just ask folks if you'll hold your signs down? Because there are people behind you. It's fine to have a sign, but as long as the people behind you can see. So what happened in 2019, and again, that I was very fortunate to arrive in the legislature the year after much hard work had been done to pass some of these bills that had been worked on for years by people like Bob and others. But it was also a Labor Committee bill, and it was Senate Bill 2, and we were able to raise the actually I think that was House Bill 5002. We have this thing we do where we have bills in the House and the Senate that are identical, and then we can strategically decide which one we're going to move first in the House and which one in the second. We don't do that with every bill, but we do that with some. And so in the case of the minimum wage, we moved that bill. And what it did was it raised the minimum wage to $11 immediately, like in October. And then it went up every 11 months by $1. So as of now, the minimum wage is now $13 an hour. And it will go to $14 an hour, and then by June 1st of next year, it'll be at $15 an hour. So we're going to get. A little story about that. That was really funny because a few people who are here, I saw Roberto. I think Bob, you were there that day, and a few of us were going to take a picture and promote our guy, Roberto, back behind the PAL Center. And we walked through a basketball court, and these kids were playing basketball. They were kind of annoyed. We were walking through and kind of bothering their game. When we came back through, these kids they're teenagers. They were all sitting there. And we were like, well, we're elected officials, and we introduced ourselves. And like most teenagers, they didn't seem that interested. And then I said, did any of you guys get a raise this year by $1? And they were like, yeah, that was pretty cool. And all of a sudden they were interested in politics, because it's really important. What we did really helped tremendously a lot of families. And so I'm glad you raised that.
No, thanks so much, because I think nobody has represented the Latinos as you have represented being out there. And without even mentioning the family paid leave, which is totally another story, so I think that's great. We never have a progressive, especially for the Latinos, and thanks so much. And
it's pretty easy to represent a community like this, because this community is so welcoming to all of us. And I have found my ability to go to the Ecuadorian Center, Ozzy. I know you're active there, and Wilson, and we really, it's pretty great. This year I was named La Madrina for the Ecuadorian Civic Center, and I wear that sash. I'm surprised I didn't wear it today, but I wear it whenever I go out. And so it's just been a very wonderful experience for me and for my husband to really get to know not just the Latino community, but so many people in this room that I wouldn't have otherwise known. And so that's one of the best parts of being an elected official. You get to meet a lot of people.
Julie, about 4 years ago, I talked to my friend who was pregnant, and I asked her how long she was going to be with her baby. And she said, I can only be with the baby for 2 weeks. And I couldn't believe it. So thank you for what you have done, because it's one of the best in the country, I believe.
It is. So our paid family leave program, which is that little paid family leave program. So the paid family leave program is, it went into effect in January. So people paid like an insurance program on that. And you paid 0.5% of your paycheck. And then now you get to take the benefit up to 12 weeks. And when the minimum wage gets to $15 next year, the maximum benefit will go up to $900 a week, depending on what your income is. And for low-income folks, the people making the minimum wage, it's 95% of your income. So it's really a great benefit, and that's why it is, one of the best in the country. It also provides for family members. And I saw a hand in the back. I don't know if Elvis was trying to get my attention. Did you want to talk about paid leave or something else?
No, something else.
Let me finish on paid leave, because on paid leave, it does allow you to take off to help your family. And it's a very broad definition of family, because as we know, not everybody grows up in that's sort of what we always thought of as the traditional nuclear family. We have a lot of folks who are growing up taking care of their grandparents, or their grandparents are taking care of them when they grew up. And so we developed a very broad definition of family to really address that and really make sure people were able to be with their family. Sometimes when I was working on that bill, some folks would say, well, I'm retired. What good is this for me? Or I'm gonna retire. I don't want to pay into it. I'm gonna retire in a year. Well, what if you get sick? So when I get sick and I'm old, which hopefully won't happen for a long time. I'm already old, but it's not gonna happen when I'm gonna get sick. But when you're older, you're still gonna need somebody, a family member who can help you. And so it's really good for everyone. It really benefits everyone. But I saw Elvis had his hand up, so go ahead.
I can wait later.
Okay.
Just.
All right. Go ahead, Mary.
Yes, thank you. I wanted to talk to you about two issues I think that's important to everybody in this room. It's healthcare issues. One is the bill for changing the law to allow medical assistants to give vaccinations in outside of a hospital setting. Well, the bill that's going through the Public Health Committee doesn't really restrict it just to physician's office. And I don't know if you have any feeling that we could do that. Because we've been pushing this, we've been fighting this bill for 12 years. And we've been successful until now because they allowed so many other people to give vaccinations for the pandemic that, we've lost our ability to keep it just for licensed professionals. And what my concern is, or our concern is that they would do it in a pop-up clinic and stuff and have medical assistants be able to give vaccinations. But that can be restricted just to, say, a pediatric office or physician's office, so it doesn't go outside. Because that's who's been pushing this, pediatricians, because they don't want to pay RNs or LPNs or anybody with a license to give. And as a matter of fact, you probably don't know it, many doctors are disregard the law and have medical specialists give you a vaccination when you go into the office and give you a shot already. They just don't. No one reports it to the state. And the other issue is the bill that's going through about to stop mandatory overtime for nurses. This is so important because we're very fortunate at Danbury Hospital that we have a contract that prevents it. But our contract is going to be up next year. And you know well that Danbury Hospital is going to push because the state says that certain circumstances you can do mandatory overtime, and they want to do that. So be prepared to recognize your nurses. And if you can come on the 13th to Harvard to support this, to support the nurses, because do you want somebody that's too tired to take care of you and your loved ones in that hospital? Only nurses know if they are too tired to work and to be mandated to work. Then what's going to happen? Because nurses are primary caregivers for their children.
Absolutely. So Mary's been a nurse for a lot of years in our community, and we thank all of our nurses for the work that you've done over the years. Especially our nurses were really on the front lines during the pandemic. And I was fortunate to meet with the nurses union here in Danbury, and I heard, directly from them about the overtime issue, which is very severe and very dangerous for our community. It's horrible for the nurses, but it's also very dangerous within the community. It's not fair to anybody. We do have a bill, as Mary mentioned, in our labor committee that we passed out of the committee that would restrict the overtime usage. It could still be done on a voluntary basis, but a person couldn't be required to do overtime in the way that they're doing it. And as you said, Mary, there are some hospitals that are unionized, and we have already had them in the contract, but it really should be, it's a public health issue. It's not just about the workers. It's really, it's important that we protect workers, but it's also a bigger issue because of its impact in the community. On the second issue, I would say there's some concern about, there is some concern about the medical assistant part of it, and you described it very well. It did make it through public health, but I'm sure there's going to be more conversations about how that bill gets done, before it comes to the floor. So we'll be keeping an eye on it. I see Chip has his hand up. Here.
Hi, thank you, Senator Kushner. I have a question. Could you give us an update on the cancer bill, where you're going with the cancer bill for firefighters in the state of Connecticut?
Well, again, I want to thank Chip. Chip is a firefighter. You're the president of the Firefighters Union. But our firefighters are exposed to carcinogens, and whenever there's fire, and too many firefighters, young firefighters, get sick with cancer and often don't survive it and leave behind families. And so I know the firefighters union in the state, long before I came to the legislature, worked on that issue, and they put into statute to develop a fund that would be there for cancer relief, a cancer relief fund for firefighters. There are several problems with it. First of all, we didn't fund it every year, even though we're supposed to. But more importantly, as we dug into this last year, it was brought to our attention in the Labor Committee, we did a task force on this issue. And in the course of the task force, we learned things like if you apply for the fund for your wages while you were sick, you couldn't apply to workers' comp. That seemed to be a huge problem. We also found that in workers' comp, you couldn't win a case because you couldn't prove with complete uncertainty that you got the cancer from your job. So the bill that we're working on, and it's a tough one, but the bill we're working on would have what's called a rebuttable presumption at workers' compensation. And what that means is you go in when you file your claim, and it's assumed you got it. And there's like 15 cancers that fall into this category. It's not every cancer, but there are like 15 cancers that fall into this. So it's assumed then that you got your cancer at work. The employer, which is most municipalities, can then rebut that. So they have a chance to argue, well, no, you are a lifetime smoker, or no, you grew up in a family that had a history of this kind of cancer. There is the ability to rebut the presumption, but essentially it would make it much easier for families to get covered that way. And it's really important because we've had some young firefighters die, and when they died, they left behind family. And we had a very difficult testimony from a woman whose husband died. It was a pretty big case here in Connecticut, and left her and her children without, not just income, but without health care. And it's not right. We expect firefighters to go into, to save us and to put their lives at risk. And we really owe them that we're going to take care of them and their families in the end. So I'm really pleased to be working on it. I will say that there have been some productive discussions, I believe, recently between the Council of Municipalities, CCM here in Connecticut, and also your union. And I hope that we'll be able to work something through so that there's an agreement on how to approach it. And we're going to keep working on it. But it was a very eye-opening experience to be part of that task force. And there's another bill that we have that's going to, I think, really help not just firefighters, but municipal workers. If you don't mind, I'll just take a minute on that because you remind me there's something called a permanent partial disability pension offset. If you can say that. But what that, and I'm sure you know about this, Chip, but what that is in some of our fire departments, the cities, under statute, it's allowed to do this, that if you if you have a disability, like a permanent partial disability, like you have lost use of your hand or your arm, there's a schedule that workers' comp figures out what you're owed for that. And as a result, you get that payment out for several weeks after, as part of the settlement, as they award. And that works pretty well. But what doesn't work well is if the person can't go back to work and retire, some cities are taking advantage and reducing the pension by the amount of the award. And that doesn't seem fair. So we are trying to address that, and what I've heard is that there's no opposition to that this year. So I'm hopeful that we can get that done. And that doesn't just apply to firefighters, that's any worker who has a permanent partial disability in a municipality, so that could affect a lot of people. So I see a hand here.
Yes. Hello, everyone. My name is Cindy. I'm part of the community, Danbury community. And I would like to talk about a specific topic, and a specific one that is one of the most important problems that we have in the society, and it's education. I would like to know, first of all, that that's the most important thing, because that's one of the columns that help us to improve now in every part of the society. So I have a question for you, principally, and I would like to know the reason why. I realized, I know that we were out of the education was out of the budget. So I would like to know the reason why it was, because I was read before, the education is part of it is the most important thing in our society. So I would like to know the reason why the education that we don't receive, we are not going to receive the budget about the budget from you, the government, to the education. So I would like to know your response.
Sure. So we have spent a lot of time talking about education in this community for decades, actually. And I think we all recognize that there's a real serious problem in our schools, that we are overcrowded, and that's particularly problematic here in Danbury. It's one of the biggest problems we have, and we haven't built enough schools, we haven't developed enough programs, we haven't hired enough teachers, we have overcrowded classrooms, and those aren't good conditions for learning. We also know we have a lot more English language learners, and that's a number that's growing, and so, presents certain issues. Did you want to say something else?
Yeah.
I see you have your hand.
Yeah. I know that part of this group on this place, they don't know English, so I would like to translate for them, and also let them know as well that I know that one of the reasons.
I actually have a translator, so if you wouldn't mind translating, that would be great.
Yeah. So I would like to know, I just want you to translate, that I would like to know the reason why the charter school, because we know that we need to get some options for our education, because that's part of our law, that's part of us. We need to know some education options, so we don't have we don't need to have to go to a specific place that the government wants to be to us to be there. So I would like to know the reason why, if we want to get a charter education, a charter school, you guys block the charter education.
Ella está preguntando por qué razón el charter school es una opción que usted no está de acuerdo con ella.
So what I would say is, on the charter school, it's been an issue that's been in our community for the last couple of years. And there are many of us who feel like there are better ways to address our educational needs in the city. For one thing, we want to really address all the kids in the city. And we know that the overcrowding, for instance, in a high school, we need to reduce the high school by 1,000 kids in order to really address the overcrowding. And we know that kids want a different curriculum, and that's something we're working on as well. So we are working on, and I think we'll be successful. It's another issue I want to encourage you all to vote yes in the referendum that will be in June. to approve bonding for a new school in Danbury that will accommodate nearly 1,400 students, and it will be, okay, I'm going to let him translate this.
El asunto del colegio charter ha sido tratado por muchos años. Nosotros consideramos que hay otras mejores opciones y en las votaciones los invitamos a que apoyen el bono que se va a hacer para poder financiar esas opciones educativas.
Thank you. And that school that we're talking about, the Career Academy, will bring in 1,400 spots for 1,400 students.
El colegio academia es un colegio que va a permitir la opción de tener acceso a más de 1,400 estudiantes en Danbury.
And one of the things this is something that I know Bob and I and other members of the Danbury delegation, last year we were able to get approval from the state that 80% of the funding to construct the school will be covered by the state, which is really great.
Lo que logramos lograr con Bob y otras personas de la delegación de Danbury fue conseguir suficiente dinero para que el 80% del colegio sea pagado por el Estado.
And Bob points out that it normally would be 50, and we got it up to 80.
Usualmente la cantidad que paga el Estado es 50%, pero en este caso, gracias a la delegación, se logró que el porcentaje fuera del 80%.
Yes.
School, which I think is really important, is that this school curriculum is not just going to be for the kids that go to the new high school. We're changing the curriculum for the entire high school population.
Lo interesante de este colegio es que todo el currículum no va a ser solamente para la academia, sino va a ser completamente cambiado para los muchachos que están en el high school de Danbury.
So there will be a pathways curriculum, and there will be 6 academies. Each academy will have multiple pathways, so that we will have something like 24 pathways that kids can, declare and then focus on in their high school years. And that's going to be true for every kid, both at the new school, which is going to be in the old Cardis building, but it's also going to be true at Danbury High School.
Van a haber 6 academias generales que va a permitir tener un total de aproximadamente 24 formas en que los estudiantes pueden seguir sus estudios en este high school que es muy singular. Este colegio va a estar ubicado en donde antes tenía la oficina Cartus, es un edificio muy bonito en el lado de Kenosha.
You said it's a pretty institute. I didn't say that, but I'm glad you did. Okay, I know, Elvis, did you want to ask something? We're not ready for you yet, okay.
Yeah, we can. Yeah,
Okay.
don't not feel able to something.
Go ahead, Charlotte.
The new schools that's coming is it's not going to be selected by lottery.
So the new school won't be a lottery. It will be based on which pathway you pick. So a kid in the 9th grade, all of the children will be exposed to all of the pathways.
Okay.
Do you want to translate that?
No hay una lotería para que los estudiantes sean seleccionados para el colegio. Cada estudiante tendrá la oportunidad de escoger en qué academia quiere estar.
So they'll get a little taste of each academy, and then depending on which academy, which pathway and academy they choose, they'll end up at either the Danbury High School or at the new school. So it's going to happen in both schools.
Dependiendo de la academia que escojan, el estudiante va a tener la sede de Kenosha Avenue o la sede regular del Danbury High que ahora tiene.
So I see a hand here.
Hi. So I'm a recent Danbury Public School graduate. I went to Danbury High School, and I know we always talk about it, that it's super overcrowded. And I know that Danbury Public School needs more funding. We are 169 out and 169 in per student funding. What do you think is the solution to the issue, and what can be done to support the Danbury Public Education and School?
I think that's a great question. So do you want to translate it? The question was, we're 169 out of 169 towns and cities on how much we spend per pupil in our schools. How can we change that?
I can translate it.
Oh yeah, you can.
Yo dije que yo soy una estudiante graduada de Danbury High School y yo sé que en
I'm not sure they can hear you. You have
Hi, so yo dije que yo soy una estudiante graduada de Danbury High School y yo sé que hay mucha gente y muchos estudiantes en Danbury High School. So, la pregunta que yo hice fue que yo sé que el sistema de Danbury High School no tiene muchos recursos económicos y que tenemos 169 adentro de 169 que hay por estudiante del dinero que recibimos. So, la pregunta es que qué piensa Senator Kushner sobre la solución que se puede hacer para arreglar este problema y también seguir apoyando a la educación pública que hay en Danbury.
Thank you. So that is a really important question, and it's something we've been dealing with there's folks here who served or currently serve on the city council who are very well aware. The funding for our schools comes from two sources. There's the state funding that is part of a formula, the education cost sharing formula, that decides how much money per pupil we're going to get here in Danbury, and there are a lot of considerations in how that formula is constructed. But in many cases, then and in all cases, there's also the local funding from the city or the town. And in the case of Danbury, what we have found is that even though we're not at the bottom in terms of what the state gives us, in fact, we're not even close to the bottom in that regard. But we are at the bottom because the city doesn't put in enough money. So this is really an issue for our city. And it's something we have to address, and we need commitments from our elected officials. I'll tell you one thing that really burned me up last year. Last year, we passed a budget that brought more money to Danbury for properties that are not taxed by the city. There's a formula for that too, but it's buildings like courthouses and the university, the hospital, churches, places where we don't collect taxes on the property. And so what the state does is it reimburses the cities for this, but it doesn't fully reimburse them. So what we did last year was we set up a new system for that, and it increased the amount of money that Danbury was going to get because of the amount of property we have that isn't taxed. We actually added an extra tier, so we got an extra $1.1 million out of this system because our schools are what's called an alliance district, where we are not doing as well as we should be in our schools. And so that funding should have gone directly to the schools, but instead it goes to the cities. And then the city, if you remember last year, I was trying to get a commitment from the city officials or the people running for office, if they would commit that that money be added to whatever budget that we develop for the school budget. And instead what happens every year is the school, and there's folks here from the Board of Ed. The Board of Ed folks go to the school, they take the budget for the school to the city, and then the city decides how much they're going to fund of that budget. And what they do is they offset what they are going to fund by the money that comes for the Alliance District and the money that comes in from Pilot. So it's really not fair, and we need to put more money in our municipalities. We need to put more money. The city needs to come up and put more money into schools, because that is the most important thing.
Hi, Julie. So I've been teaching public school since the last century. And many of my colleagues who have been around as long as I have, I'm sure you've seen it in the papers, that there is a huge wave of us who just, the last year, and not to take anything away from the first responders and the healthcare workers, but teachers, we're burned out at my age, right? And we're retiring in droves. So, in the field of dreams, if you build it, he will come. You build the high school, you may not get the teachers that you want, or at least the pool. So this is more kind of an observation, because I'm actually a case study for this. I'm about ready. So I just want you to kind of keep your ears perked for any kind of programs that are going to encourage young people who are in school. I mean, there's not a lot of professions that you have to have a master's just to get started in it. And that, for a lot of people, that's incurring a lot of debt. And to take, teachers don't really teach for the money, and we do it for other reasons. But any kind of incentive program that you see that you can champion to get young people into the profession, I think is going to help. All right?
I really appreciate that, and we do need to thank our teachers. The stories we heard about folks who were teaching, especially with the remote teaching where you were like, you had some kids that were in class, some kids were remote, and having to manage that was incredible. And then at the beginning of this year, when we got hit with that very contagious COVID, and thank goodness it didn't get people terribly sick, but it was very contagious. And I believe in that first week of school, we had like 332 teachers that were out because of COVID. And there was a lot of classrooms that were like being shut down, and then they'd reopen, and it was a chaos. And it is why we really focused a lot in the Education Committee on the Senate bill that will really start addressing the effects of that. But you're absolutely right. We are aware that there's a crisis in terms of attracting teachers. We have several different approaches to that, although I must say I think it's not going as fast or as far as I'd like to see it go. I mean, one of the other issues that we feel here in Danbury, and I'd love your opinion on it, that we don't have enough teachers of color, and we don't have enough bilingual teachers, so that we know kids learn better when they see a model, somebody that looks like them or speaks like them in the classroom. And so that is something else. We have a bill that is for what's called minority teacher recruitment. That title is going to change, I'm told. Finally, it's sort of an antiquated title, but there is a bill that's going to be about recruiting more diversity amongst our teachers as well. So that's important.
I have a question.
Can you hold on one second?
No, but I was before her.
I'm not keeping track of whose hands are going up, but I will call in next. Go ahead.
Yeah, so question about healthcare. I know you mentioned in the beginning, but immigrant communities in Connecticut have a really hard time accessing healthcare. I'm undocumented, my family's undocumented. Healthcare access has always been an issue. This year, there was a bill in the session to expand the Husky access up to age 18, which was really good. It was not everything that we needed, but it was something. It didn't pass the committee. I know this conversation in the budget to make it up to 12. So I guess my question is, do you support this legislation, and what can we do with this exception to make sure it happens? One concern that I have is that we only make it up to 12. Then, kids from 12 to 18 and others can access healthcare. And we really need to at least make it up to 18, and also make sure that we're working so that the parents and adults also have healthcare.
Do you want to translate that?
I can translate it. Go ahead. So, I just heard a little bit of the conversation. So, lo que ella dijo es que hay un bill en el Senado que estamos intentando pasar, la Organización de Internet de Estudiantes por el Sueño, que es un bill que va a proveer healthcare, seguro de salud a niños inmigrantes indocumentados que vienen a este país. El año pasado nosotros pudimos pasar el bill para niños menores de 8 años, pero este año estamos luchando para pasarlo a niños de 8 hasta 18 años, aunque la meta es pasarla para todos en Connecticut, sin importar su estado migratorio. So, la pregunta para ella es qué es lo que ella puede hacer para asegurarnos de que este bill pueda ser pasado para todas las personas en Connecticut y no solo para niños hasta una cierta edad, ya que el acceso a la salud médica es algo importante para todos.
Thank you for that question. I will tell you that my first exposure to Connecticut Students for a Dream was before I even got to the legislature, when we were fighting to make sure that immigrant students got access to institutional financial aid. That was a system that was set up that, and I know some of the folks in this room fought very hard to start with, just to get immigrant students in Connecticut to get in-state tuition. That was the first step. Both Carolina and Camilla, and I'm not sure I said that in the right order, but the Bortoletto sisters, which they're well known in the state, were really involved in making that happen. But the second step was to get institutional financial aid, and that too was something that's really incredibly important, because when you pay tuition to the state universities and colleges, a portion of your tuition goes into a fund to help other students who can't afford to go to school. And so immigrant students were paying into the fund, but they weren't allowed to collect any of the assistance. And when I met you guys, you opened my eyes to this problem, and we were able to pass a bill that allowed immigrant students to get access to institutional financial aid. So that's how I met you all. So since the very beginning, I have been, since I became aware of the issues, I've been really involved in fighting for undocumented students and families. And now we're at the point where we're fighting to get health care. And we tried to do this last year up to age 18. I was a big supporter of that bill. I would like to have seen it pass last year. It passed at that kids who are age 8 would get it. This year, we were fighting to raise it to age 18. My understanding is the bill that's before us today is a bill that would raise it to age 12, and that once you're in the program, you would stay until you were 18. I realize it's not enough, but that's where we are right now as of today, and I support 18, though, if you want to know what I do. I want to say that last line. I support age 18 for all children. All children should have health care, no matter what your status. So, do you want to say that in Spanish?
El proceso ha sido un proceso bastante largo. Yo he conocido los esfuerzos que han hecho el grupo de estudiantes sin documentos. La primera parte incluía el poder tener acceso a la universidad, lo cual se logró, y la segunda parte tenía que ver pagando lo que se llama los costos in-state, que son más bajos que los out of state. Y la segunda parte tenía que ver con tener acceso a la ayuda financiera para las personas sin documentos. Mi opinión es que ahora el siguiente paso obviamente es darle acceso a las personas sin documentos para que tengan servicios de salud. Es un proceso y vamos en buen camino.
Lucas, go ahead.
Thank you. I'll do it in Spanish and English so everybody understands. Primero, nosotros tenemos una escuela que aprobamos en el 2018. Tenemos todos los fondos para construirla en la Main Street. La semana pasada los fondos estaban incluidos en el presupuesto. La senadora Julie Kushner, Bob Goffrey, Kenneth Gucker y Ali Brennan hicieron una emergencia, una reunión y obligaron a los líderes en Hartford a sacar el dinero para nuestra escuela. Nuestra pregunta será, ¿por qué llegar a ese extremo donde pelean contra su propio partido para bloquear una escuela? So my question was that we had the funds for the charter school in the proposed budget. In an emergency meeting, you, Godfrey, Gucker, and Ali Brennan forced Ritter and Looney to take it out of that budget, going against the chairs, Sanchez, Quarry, Austin, and Walker. My question, why get to that extreme when Danbury becomes the only city that fights its own party over the school?
That sounds nice, but there's a very big disagreement about what's the best way to deal with our educational needs, and there are very limited dollars that we have available. And so when we were elected to do what we think is best for Danbury, and your elected officials think that putting our focus on the public schools that exist here and making sure that they are expanded and that they grow and that we can address all of the students' needs is something that we've been working on for several years. Do you want to translate that for me?
Sí, hay muchas formas de ver este asunto y definitivamente nosotros estamos de acuerdo en que la educación pública hay que fortalecerla y es donde cada dólar que haya disponible debería ser invertido.
Las escuelas charter son públicas. I just want to make sure everybody understands that they're public schools, so that's double talk.
And I didn't say public, I said our current public schools. There are traditional public schools and there are charter public schools, and nobody's trying to confuse that. So, go ahead.
I have a question. I'm going to say it in English and then I will say it in Spanish. The first one is, do you know what's the difference between a charter school and a public school? ¿Ustedes saben cuál es la diferencia entre una escuela, por favor?
All right, but yeah, you can interrupt, please.
¿Saben la diferencia entre una escuela charter y una escuela pública?
Yes, we do.
¿Cuál?
Okay, charter schools are public schools. So they're both public schools. One is a traditional public school, and the other is a charter school. So they're both public.
Yeah, but what is the difference? What the difference in education? ¿Cuál es la diferencia entre la educación pública y charter school? ¿Sabes?
Yeah, I know that the charter school they can change the curriculum, they can do different stuff.
According to the
According to the rules of the state, the board, because they're all directed by the Board of Education. So todas las escuelas públicas tradicionales y las escuelas públicas charters están todas dirigidas por el Board de Educación. Nadie puede, y tanto así, que las escuelas charter, si a los 5 años no producen, pueden ser cerradas. Sin embargo, una escuela tradicional pública no la pueden cerrar nunca porque la unión no lo permite. So the charter schools, if after 5 years you don't, yeah, I have to say it. I have to answer. The charter school, if you don't perform after 5 years, it gets closed. So we have to perform. Yeah.
Let me just, Diana, just 1 second, just 1 second. Let me just suggest that you finish your comment, and then I know there are other people that have questions they want to ask, but finish your comment.
I need to say, you're right. You are very right that the public schools will always be open, and the charter school won't be open if in 5 years they don't show the results.
They don't perform.
They don't perform.
Yeah.
You are absolutely right.
Yeah.
The one thing that I want you to know is that I was a teacher in a charter school.
Okay.
And I couldn't be there teaching that. Why? Because what happens is the charter school teach they prepare the students to take exam and pass the exam, because that's how the school shows that they are producing. They are doing what they are supposed
Every
to
charter
do.
school
Hold on, wait a second, you guys. Let me just say that we're not gonna have, stop a minute. This is, Maria.
Guys, we wanted to say
Okay,
hi.
thank you so much.
So
Thank you very much.
we would love, because we know,
Wait a second.
we let the voters
Maria, please stop for a minute. I'm not shutting anybody down. I'm asking that we have 4.
Thank you, guys.
You don't want, you don't want to wait and listen to Diana's statement. If you don't want to listen, go ahead. That's okay. You don't have to stay. You'll have a big show. And I'll let you say something. All right, stop. Okay. Diana would like to finish what she was saying. But what I won't allow, what I was trying to stop, is interrupting people. It's rude and it's not considerate. So I will ask that nobody interrupt Diana. Let her finish her statement. But I do want to make it clear that after Diana makes that statement, there are other people who have other issues they like to discuss. And this isn't a debate about which is better. It's just a frank conversation. So, Diana, go ahead and say what you want to say, but then I will take the microphone.
I need to say it in Spanish so that everyone will be able to understand. Yo solo quiero decirles a ustedes que yo he sido una profesora voy a cumplir 25 años como profesora acá en Connecticut. Y es la profesión que más me gusta y lo que haría toda mi vida por los chicos. Yo soy latina. Y yo les digo a ustedes, he tenido la oportunidad de trabajar acá en Danbury, en una escuela pública, luego fui a una escuela en New Haven, de Charter School, y trabajé allá con Mr. John Taylor en esa escuela, y les quiero decir a ustedes que no pude seguir trabajando allá, porque vi las cosas que vi y respeto, pero como yo le digo a ustedes, la educación tiene que ser una educación buena para todos los chicos, para todos los estudiantes, sin importar la diferencia. Y les digo una cosa, yo trato a cada estudiante como trato a mis hijos. Y les digo a ustedes una cosa, la Charter School es una escuela como un negocio. Tienen que mostrar, ellos tienen que mostrar. Y me encantó de que hayas dicho que si no cumplen en 5 años, lo cierran. Es una cosa que yo digo, claro, es muy bueno, pero ¿a quiénes son los que estresan para mostrar resultados? No los profesores, los niños. A los niños les enseñan para tomar el examen, para mostrar resultados. Y como mamá, yo deseo lo mejor para mis hijos y deseo lo mejor para los hijos de ustedes. Y la solución, yo respeto su ideal, le respeto. Pero lo que digo es, les digo que la educación tiene que ser para todo el mundo, para todos los niños igual, para todos los niños de Danbury. De Danbury, everyone, every single student should have the same education. Lottery is not the answer. Lottery is not the answer. Because that's what charter schools do, a lottery. Yeah.
We're not having a debate. I said that. We're not, this is not a debate or a one-issue town hall. We have all kinds of issues. So there's lots of people with their hands up. I don't want it. I'm gonna call on Juan Vasquez next.
Let's go, no vale la pena.
So, I know you're very involved locally in the veteran community, and I see you in the veteran ceremonies at every one, and we thank you for your attendance. The last bills that I was aware of that was helping veterans were signed in 2019 that expanded job training in the trade field for veterans and also expanded property tax relief. I want to know if what's the agenda for veterans in the upcoming year and what bills are in the queue.
I'm not on the Veterans Committee, but I'll tell you, it's the only one I'm not on. I'm on 6 committees, but the Veterans Committee is a good friend of mine. His name is George Cabrera, and George is the chair for the Senate. You know, I know that he's really involved also in trying to look at those kinds of job training programs. I can only tell you one thing that I have been touched by here in Danbury. Is that I am trying to help the Civic Center down, communities, what's it called, the Connecticut Institute for Communities. They are working to build 80-person housing unit that would give preference to veterans, and it would be affordable housing. And so we are working on trying to get a bond through that would help them get the funding for the garage that they would need to build for that. In terms of the other specific things, I do go to all the veterans events. First of all, I want to thank you for your service, both in the military, but also by serving our community at the VFW. You guys, that post is so active, and I do go every month to your scholarship breakfast so that I can help contribute. These guys, they do it all, and I see these 2 guys there every week. Every month I go there. I've gotten to know Wayne, and I, of course, know JP, and because you guys are there supporting the kids that are also going to get those scholarships. But, I will get back to you with more specifics about what the actual what we're actually doing in terms of legislation. So I'll be happy to look into that for you.
Thank you.
And I know Ryan is here, so Ryan will help keep me on track. You'll make sure I get an answer for Juan about the bills in the Veterans Committee. Great. I see Juan Fonseca, and then I'll come forward here.
Thank you, Senator Kushner, for having this, and I want to thank you for opposing the funding for the charter school in Danbury. My question is related to a different issue, but I do want to name the fact that the group that was here does not represent all the Latinos in Danbury, and I also want to name publicly the fact that our community is being manipulated. Information is not being shared, and I just want to name that because it needs to be named. But my question is, I know that there are a couple of different bills in the Judiciary Committee, and I know that you're not in that committee, but many of those bills are punitive and will increase the time in which youth will be detained after they are arrested. Also, it will increase GPS monitoring, as well as other punitive measures for youth. So I just want to ask you how you're going to be voting when those bills are introduced to the floor. Because again, even though there are the bill that was introduced by the governor and the bill that was introduced by your party has some good stuff, right? To offer resources to all our communities throughout the state. There are lots of different aspects in the bill that will continue to criminalize Black and brown youth. And I just want to make sure that you're aware of that and how you're going to be voting when those bills come out today.
Thank you. So I'm not on the Judiciary Committee, but I do follow it pretty closely. Bob is on there, so Bob, I'm going to let you talk about those bills.
We're a team. And let me tell you what a rare change it was from her predecessors. We were not a team. So it's working for Danbury, and it's working for tonight. And yes, she you're absolutely right. We've been spending a lot of time in the last decade reviewing all of our criminal statutes, our corrections department statutes, because I certainly realize, and we've been dragging some of our colleagues along with facts that have said, look, we've got a disproportionate number of people of color who get arrested and charged, while people who are not of color committing the same acts aren't. And so we've been working very hard to try and fix that. We did the second chance bill a few years ago. This is before Julie. We did the second chance bill, which in essence makes sure if you do go into jail or prison, when you come out, you get some breaks. I've learned the hard way over many years, the best way to rehabilitate someone who's coming out of a prison is to make sure their family is there, supporting them, to make sure they have a roof over their head, to make sure they have a job. And if they have those three things and the support of the community around them, they're going to succeed and they're not going to go back to a life of crime. It's a constant fight. It's a constant fight. It takes daily interest. It takes daily action to be able to get that. And you're right. And yeah, one thing that disturbed me, I was reading in the New York Times, maybe a couple of years ago, a bunch of the people from the Nixon administration, way back in the 20th century, finally admitted that their war on drugs was for the purpose of putting, and I quote, hippies and Negroes in jail, unquote. That's the terminology of that time, back in the 1970s. And that is just plain wrong. We got to forget, it's also stupid. Yeah. Stupid and wrong are often the same things. You're absolutely right. So we're continuing to do that. We're continuing to do that this year. I find one of the life lessons I've learned is sometimes the only way to get a loaf of bread is a slice at a time. So we've been doing this incrementally, and I think we're in a really good place. And I think that we're moving forward on that. But you're absolutely right, and thank you for raising these issues. We're going to continue to fight, and I know Julie's going to be in the fight with us.
Thank you.
He's in the building. I mean, what can I say about you, Julie? Thank you so much, for your work and hard for us. And I'm happy too that you yet go against charter school. I don't think that's the way to go. We need public schools to be funded in this city, in this state. I don't know where they were last Tuesday when we were fighting for the, for the budget for the public school. So if they are advocating for the school, for education, they should have been there. That's what they're doing. So now you see. But I don't want to talk about that, because we all know, as a Latino here in Danbury, as a leader, comunitario, a community leader, together here, we support you, we believe you, because from day one, you have been with us. We need more like you.
The first time I met you, and Zoraida and Ava, and a bunch of other people that were there, they asked me when I was running for office, the Dominican, back then it was called the Dominican Club, now it's the Dominican Community Center, but you asked me to come for an interview, and it was on video. It was like on Facebook Live, and it was 70 minutes of questions. They had written out questions and hammered me with questions. And from that day on, it was
Yeah,
an
we
incredible
grilled you. We
experience.
grilled you. Yeah, and we found out that you are made up based on values that we share, and that's why we're here. That's why we support you, and we're gonna go all the way back to Hartford with you. And we need more people like you in Hartford. We definitely represent our community. Sometimes I call you like you don't know it, but I think you're Dominican. Sometimes
Now that you teach me how to dance, I ain't supposed to do that.
so definitely yes, but I want to try something with you now that I know is very close to me. Real close. So you cried with me a lot when my son passed away almost 3 years ago. Oh, well, no overdose. I'm sorry.
It's okay.
So since that day, way before that, we were already, sharing a lot of ideas, a lot of, projects. We were been talking about, what we can do, for people like my son at that time that I was struggling, with, process of, trying to clean himself, with programs, doing a lot of things. Even I went back to my son and said, hey, what can you do? Let's talk about, I'm thinking about like making some proposal to some friends, and one of those friends was you, like 6 months before my son died. I say, hey, let's sit down, and I want you to, share with me ideas. What can you, like prevention, and when you're already there, what to do. How I can come out of that. Because my son at that point, at that time, he was doing really great. He was clean, and he was, in his old house, happy with a lot of plans. We had a lot of plans and all of that. Unfortunately, and he wrote 2 pages. Remember, 6 months later, he died. It's very, whatever he wrote there, it was, like prevention, and after the fact, how I can come out. He just said it before he died, 6 months later. So after that, we've been working with the community for a long time, but after that, we have a responsibility with, my family to be with the community. We've been talking to you. You've been, you have become part of our family because we share a lot of ideas, a lot of passion about what to do in our community. So we got involved in organizations like Ryan Cody's Law that has several proposals. The last year, I believe is HB 5135, I think passed. Last year, it's related to, I got my sister here. It was related, or it is related to establishing a high-risk navigator program. We have a county there, we have King Arthur, so we have a very good group, really including our representation. And you said, that you want to be involved, and you being involved with us, with Brian Cody's organization, with events in Wilford, here, with the rallies, and in other places in Hartford when we've been there. So we have several proposals here. I can tell you, like, besides that one, I can tell you HB 5583 related to intervention by a police officer when a person suffers an overdose. HB 5141, an act permitting family members to petition for mandatory assessment and treatment of certain individuals who are abusing drugs or alcohol, and so on. My question to you, my friend, what's your plan for the next couple of years? Because you're going to be back to house. Don't worry about it. What's your plan, with all of this that happening? The opioid epidemic is worsening, it's getting worse and worse. Mental health, even, with everything that happened 2 years ago, is provoking more kids and people, to get into drug use and, getting, having the consequences like my son to pass away. What plan do you have? What can I tell to my family? Say, Julie is gonna be working on this.
Well, first of all, I was with you the day that your son died, and so I was very much, my husband and I were very affected by that. But it's affected all of our families, I had lost my sister-in-law, she lost her son to an overdose. A year ago, we lost my daughter's best friend, since we've known since 3-4 years old, to an overdose. And it is a crisis, and it's affecting everyone and every family. What are we going to do about it? Do I have a plan? My plan is to make sure that the people who are experienced and have experienced this like you are involved in figuring out the solutions, because you're very close to the problem. And we have to have your voice at the table. Right now, we have $300 million settlement with the drug companies to address the opioid crisis, and we need to spend that money wisely. I know there's a bill in the Public Health Committee to create a 35-person advisory committee. And much like we've done with gun violence prevention, we've come around to understanding that we need to really engage the people who are already dealing with these issues and that have real-life experience, as well as the people who bring to it maybe, studies and professional experience as well. It has to be both sides of that. And then we have to fund programs that are actually working. And you're right, last year we did the Navigator bill because we knew from the experience in New Milford that the Morrisseys started. This was a program that works, that it gets good results. And so we want to make sure that we're funding programs that actually have results oriented. So I don't have a big plan, and I wish I did. I wish someone had a cure for this that's affected our whole society. But I do know that a good start would be to invest those dollars in creating opportunities to resource the organizations that are doing the work successfully and then expand them. So one of the things that I always objected to in education, going back to education just for a minute, is that we set up these model programs like AIS, like Westside Academy, and they're wonderful programs. They're so successful. But then why don't we take that model and implement it across the city? And the answer is money, because we don't invest enough money. And the same thing has happened with tobacco money. We didn't spend it wisely. And now I don't want to see that happen with the opioid crisis. So, my pledge to you is that I'll work with you to make sure that the people who have been impacted and really do know what works and what doesn't work are part of coming together with, the professionals that have studied this and the legislators who can make it happen. And that process, I think, is going to be moved a lot forward because we have the money now from that settlement. So we'll have dollars at our disposal immediately. But, it's something we're going to have to work on, and I don't think there is an easy or quick answer. I know that there are things that will make a difference, like having smaller schools, having smaller classrooms also contributes for intervention by teachers when they see a problem. Having, after-school activities is critical to making kids have opportunities to be together and engaged in ways that will lead to better outcomes. So those are the kinds of ideas, and most of them I got from you, by the way. So.
No, exactly, because, one thing that I will like here in the city, is just the programs that can get the kids involved, in even after school program or working through organization. We have organizations here that are able, they are willing to do the work together with the city authority, with the school authority, and work together and planning, There is a place here, Harambe, that have done a great job, providing to kids. Why not if you like something like that and also give the opportunity to other organizations, like Dominican Community Center, like Ecuadorian Civic Center, the Brazilian. So that's what we need. But in the meantime, we need to work together. And I can tell you this, and also, to finish, it's just like my testimony of the work that you've done with our community about that. Everyone who reached out to us, needing somebody, a representative of somebody to help them out from our community, Latino community, you always been there for them. And I really appreciate personally, I appreciate it personally, all of us appreciate it. So we want to, for the record, we want to make sure that sometimes the people try to divert, the truth about, the Latino community, or using our Latino community, to get some advantage, just to make sure that listen to people who are like us, decent, serious people who work, not getting paid like others, to do the right things for our community. And that, for the record, is what's happening here in Danbury with our Latino community. The majority of Latinos is decent people working for the right thing and based on the right values. And I think, and we think that you have those values that we identify with. Thank you.
One of the things that I felt when I got elected, when I decided to do this work, I realized that I had to be all in. And that meant for every community that makes up this diverse and wonderful city. And not just us here in Danbury, but I got to know Sherman really well. I'd never even been there before I ran for office. And I fell in love with Sherman. Wonderful people, very different community than Danbury, very, very small. More like the small town I grew up in. And I feel like being an elected official, you really need to connect with the people you represent. I believe that to have a good democracy, a strong democracy, a participatory democracy, everybody has to be involved. And so that's what I try and do. I try and go to as many parts of our city to really be exposed to, the good things and the bad things. I'm very upset about homelessness in our city. There's a woman that I've known for almost 10 years now, and she is homeless. And she worked at a dry cleaners in my neighborhood. And being the kind of person I am, I got to know her very well because we chatted all the time. And I know you know who I'm talking about. And I want to find her a place to live, and I want to find her a job. And so, she called me today. She needs a referral on a house, on a rental. And I said, of course, you can put me down. This is happening in our city, and people don't have anywhere to go. And it's really, it doesn't matter who you are. It is a basic right to have a place to live and to have food on your table and to have health care. These are our values. These are the things, and a great education. These are the things that we care about, and it's hard because there aren't a lot of resources out there. We have a huge housing crisis in this town. People cannot afford to live in this town unless you're making a pretty good wage. I found an apartment. This woman has a voucher, and I hope she doesn't mind that I'm talking about her, but her cousin's here, so she has a voucher that will pay $1,500 a month rent. She found an apartment, and they were willing to go up to the $1,700. But the apartment complex has a rule that they accept vouchers, except you have to have income 3 times the amount of your rent. Well, if you have 3 times the amount of income as your rent, then you don't have a voucher. So it is like a total rigged thing. And that's what's happening. And people can't find housing. And you know what they tell? They tell folks, go to Bridgeport. There's cheaper housing in Bridgeport. Well, your whole family is here. And this woman has a big family. And your doctors are here. Your resources are here. This is not a solution to send somebody from Danbury who lived here all their life to end up going to some other town. So, I really appreciate, I kind of got off on a tangent, Elvis, but it's because everything is connected. The Latino community in Danbury has been so welcoming to me. And that includes the Dominicans and the Ecuadorians and some Colombians and some Mexican folks.
Brazilian.
You know, it's just an amazing community here in Danbury, and I feel enriched by being accepted into that community. But the whole community is really part of that. It's really, it's what makes Danbury such a beautiful city. I see Sonia has her hand up.
Yeah, you just said about healthcare, you think everyone should have healthcare. And there is one thing that worries me. We have paid family leave now, which is great. We pay for that, so we have that, right? A lot of undocumented immigrants pay taxes. You know, they have IT number, they pay taxes. Why can't they have paid family leave if they are gonna pay for that? Because that's also a social problem. If you don't have, like you're not working, you need help to pay your bills and everything, it's gonna be a social problem for everyone. If you pay for that, why can't undocumented immigrants don't have it?
Well,
I know it's just a seed that I'm planting here, but I wanna see it because I think it's a fair thing.
So there are a lot of people who have ITIN numbers and are working legally but they're not citizens. And
no, I'm talking about the ones that they are not citizens, but they pay taxes.
Exactly.
If they pay taxes, why can't they have it?
They
They're
should.
gonna pay for it.
So under the paid family leave program, a person who's paying taxes should have access to that program regardless of citizenship. If they're not, then that's a case where you need to come to me and let me know about it. You can actually give the name of the person to Mike and we will follow up on that, because we set that program up that anybody who paid into the program regardless of status was eligible to declare the benefits, and so we need to follow up on that case. That is one program we got done that way. And I know there were hands over here, and then I'm gonna go back around here.
The Family Leave Act, teachers are not eligible.
Oh, all right.
And you were just saying that we pay into it is because that we're a pension program instead of the Social Security?
No, so the question is about teachers and why they're not included in the paid family leave program. Teachers
They're only getting 6 weeks.
Yeah, teachers. So this is one of the problems that I hope we can come back to with this bill. It is one of the best programs in the country, but in the state of Connecticut, we have a very hard time getting bills through Appropriations Committee if there is a municipal mandate. And anything that requires a city to do something is considered a municipal mandate. So in order to get that bill through, we did not cover municipal workers. What they can do, however, and this is really important, is the law allows municipal workers to negotiate into the paid family leave program. And that you can make that part of your negotiations, because then it's not a mandate on the city, it's collectively bargained. If you do that, the way we wrote the bill, is that any non-union personnel in that city automatically then have the right to be in the program. So it was sort of a workaround. So I'm hoping that as we get deeper into this program, people will see the value of it and put it on the bargaining table. I know it's not easy, because I was helping a friend here with his negotiations for a quasi-public, and they weren't successful in getting it this year. But that doesn't mean they won't come back next year. So there's a pathway to get it.
Julie, I want to thank you all for actually supporting public education. I was not born here. I immigrated here for the Civil War that was going on in my country. My own country, this is my country. I went through the Danbury Public Schools, I went to Roberts Avenue, for those who remember that. It's not stop beating it up, thank you. Spark, Broadview, Danbury High School, and I'm so grateful to teachers and what they've done. You know, and extremely grateful. I'm not so, and now I'm a teacher. In the Danbury Public Schools, because I was the greatest school district in Washington. And you have no problems with everybody else, but you know what? We work very hard for our students, and we support them. And I've been there as long as I think that young man was talking over there.
Not so young.
And I really applaud what you guys are doing and how you support your public education, because we support all our kids, and we don't care where they come from, we just care about where they're going.
Well, thank you, and it's a very tough time to be a teacher, and I know you all work really hard at this, and so, you know, I got a very good public education when I was a kid, but even more important, my kids here in Danbury, you know, I have 2 kids who have struggled to get through school, and my oldest kid has learning disabilities that are pretty intense, and when we got to Danbury, the teachers took him in hand. I don't think he would have gotten out of high school without that help from the teachers. And I said this before, I really owe these teachers so much gratitude, and I really appreciate what they did for him. Because he's a great kid, and he got out of high school, they got him figured out where he should go to college. He became a theater major, so he didn't have to write any papers. And now he has a master's degree and is incredibly successful in his career. And this I really, there was nothing I could do to fix this problem. And recently, he's done so well in his career, I said, Oli, that's my son's name. Oli, did you want a learning disability? And he laughed and he said, Mom, you don't grow out of that. But he still has those, but he's learned how to manage it, and he learned those techniques really first in the Danbury Public Schools. And I know it's harder today than it was. He's 41. So, you know, it's harder today than it was back then because you have a lot more students. And it's really hard to give the care and address the needs the way that you need to. And, you know, he was here when we were funding our public schools at over 60% of our budget. And it dropped as low as 51%, and right now, I just read in the paper, it's 54%. But what people don't realize, that might not sound like a big percentage difference, but every percent is worth, you know, really millions. We have underfunded our schools by millions of dollars, and we are continuing to do that, I'm afraid. So, thank you, and we will keep fighting for that.
Thank you so much.
We are fighting to get the ECS funding more quickly to the towns, and that's something that I'm hopeful might happen this year. I gotta call on Jennifer, because Jennifer gave me these petitions. Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Hi, I'm Eileen Costello.
I called you Jennifer.
I know you did.
what?
Jennifer and I are always together.
Because
So
you're always together, and I know you're Eileen.
And she's actually running a workshop tonight for our preschool teachers.
So, you gave me petitions today
I
for
did.
school readiness, right?
Yes. So school readiness and child daycare centers, Head Start, we have about 1,000 subsidized early childhood spaces across Danbury. And we're the workforce behind the workforce, that's what I call us. We have not had an increase in our rates since minimum wage was $9.15. So this week, we've had our first casualty, as we call it. We've been seeing this coming. We had a program that said, we no longer want the state funding. We can't afford to run a program anymore like this. So all these families that have been on the state funding, paying $40, $50 a week for full-time childcare year-round, they have an option of staying at $235 a week. We can't continue to run our programs when we've talked about underfunding. We've been so underfunded, and we run 10 hours a day, year-round, for working families in this community. We have wait lists in almost every single program. And I know that, you know, from appropriations, there's a lot out there about renovation money and building money and a wage compensation scale for teachers and infant toddler funding. It's not helping the immediate problem. We're gonna see more and more programs closing because they can't afford to keep their doors open. They can't afford to pay their teachers. Our early childhood teachers, most of them have bachelors, some have masters, they're paid $40,000 a year at the most. And you compare that to a public school, we're working year-round, 10 hours a day. So we desperately need your help. I know you're on appropriations, Senate Bill 2, and then there's a House bill as well, but they have to deal with the immediate problem of increasing our allocation. Because all these other incentives and waiting for federal funds, et cetera, we can't keep our doors open anymore.
And I appreciate that, I mean, and you know, I see you so often in all of the child care centers that we have here in this area, and you introduced me, you know, to the school readiness programs, and I feel like this is an area where I really rely on you to help me. It's hard to dissect, as you said, there's all these programs that are for kids, you know, for free, there's all these programs, and it's hard to dissect how we get the money to the right place. I know there's a lot of money in this budget for childcare, but as you said, it may not be going to exactly, it's going to good places, but we may need to make sure we're focusing on another area. So I'm happy to talk to you more about that and see what we can do. I'm very frustrated with the budget process. I mean, we did a lot of great things in this budget, but we have so many needs. And so there are still so many areas that we've not yet addressed well enough. So, and that's one of them I care deeply about. So, absolutely.
You've been a great support to us for the past couple of years. It's been really wonderful. So I thank you for that. It's just we need to get it across the finish line. We've had these bills for 2-3 years saying that they're gonna increase us to what, at least minimum wage, to be able to compensate staff and keep our programs open.
Yeah, we absolutely need to do that. We're not paying enough. And we need to keep these programs open. We know we're in a crisis, that if and they are, like, the child care centers are critical to our economy. I mean, I've always been a big supporter of child care because it really helps our children, and it gives our children incredible opportunities. And I've seen the programs that you work with, and they're wonderful. But there's also an economic side to it, because if our parents don't have a place to put their kids, it is a crisis, and we know that. We heard Senator Blumenthal came that time where we met, and he talked about that we were right at the edge, and they know that. We need funding from the feds as well as from the state. So it is really a big problem, and we've been talking a little bit this year about universal pre-K, and that's another area where we really need to put money into these programs. We know that kids that go to school early and learn their ABCs and learn a lot of the very fundamental things, when they get to kindergarten, they're going to be able to achieve a lot more. And so the programs you run are really critical, and I thank you for that. I just wish we were doing more to help you. And and I know that you had Beth Bai here the other day, Commissioner Bai, who is formerly, was a director of a child care center and is really in touch with these issues. And now she's our commissioner. I think she really is a great connection for us, but we still have the bottom line problem of the budget and where's the money. It's very frustrating to somebody like me, and I'm sure for all of you, because we read about it in the newspapers. We've never had so much money. Then how come we can't fund these programs?
And the commissioner spoke with us quite deeply about it. And because these are state-funded programs, all these ones that offer the subsidized care, unfortunately, we're getting lumped in with all the private programs as well. So we can't increase our rates because we're state subsidized, but the private programs can. So, don't lump us all in with the funding together, because then it just means we're all getting a little, and we can't keep our doors open for a critical need in this community. Our families want full day, full year programs for their children. The 2.5 hours a day is not gonna help a working family, stay in the workforce.
Very true. Thank you. Thank you for bringing that up tonight. We're over time by 20 minutes, and I don't want to keep having you forever. We love this place, though. Let's hear it from Mothership, right? So we love what you do in our community. Last question, I think you had your hand.
Yes. I'd like to know if there's a program to help seniors and disabled people not have to go into senior housing, but stay in their homes and still get, I live in a mobile home. I own my mobile home. I work hard for my mobile home. And there's a lot of seniors in this park that are making, their lot fees is half of what I get per month. Okay, and a lot of them, we're taking money from other things to try to pay for this, which doesn't make sense if they put us in senior houses and probably pay double what our lot fees would be. Is there a program that could help us out?
I think there is a lot that we know now that people do better when they can stay in their own homes.
Yes, absolutely.
We know that that's true.
And cheaper.
It's
And
cheaper, but
cheaper for the help.
people are very happy to stay in their own homes. And so that is something we've talked about in our public health committee, but I'm not aware of what particular program is going on. But this is a good question that maybe Ron can help me follow up on like what bills and what programs have we got and could we enhance so that more people can stay in their homes. And that's a really important thing. So, if you wouldn't mind making sure that you see Mike or Ryan and get your name to them, and we'll get back to you.
As long as they raise their hand so I know who they are.
Raise your hand, Mike. Okay. And we'll get the information at the end of the meeting so we can get back to you.
Good. Thank you very much.
Well, I'm gonna call it quits here because because this was supposed to go to 7, but it was very engaging, and you all were such great participants in this meeting because I learned from you a lot of things.